The first thing I did after reincarnating as an ox was stuff myself with 100 kilos of licorice-flavored fodder so I could become the strongest ox in the barn. All the other cattle thought I was crazy. After all, the stronger you are, the more likely you are to end up in the slaughterhouse, or worse, sent off to plowfields like a beast of burden. That was almost worse than death. But what they didn't know was that I had awakened the devouring and evolution system. As long as I kept eating, I would keep getting stronger. Sure, progress was slow with ordinary fodder, but at least it was safe. I thought I could quietly reach 1,500 kilos and evolve without trouble. But the arrival of 2 humans changed everything. Dad, don't kill Chow Hai. A little girl clung to the hand of a burly man, begging him. Her eyes were red from crying, and every now and then she looked toward me. But the giant's face remained expressionless. Soon, we'll have some delicious braised beef. It smells so good. No. Yes, it smells good. But before the little girl could finish, the man stroked her head and said, "Don't worry, we're not going to kill him. The butcher already reserved him. We'll sell him right before the new year." The moment I heard their conversation, the hay in my mouth suddenly lost all flavor. Fortunately, the new year was still far away. If I could evolve before then, I would definitely find some way to escape this farm. For the next 2 months, I ate like a man possessed. Whether it was dry straw or soybean cake, I swallowed everything I could. But the results were nowhere near what I had hoped for. Type, ox. Current weight, 400 kilo. Constitution, 15. Strength, 20. Because I had only been eating low-energy food, my stats barely increased. Compared to the other oxen, I was already a giant, but that was still far from enough to fight humans. That was when the big man returned with several other men. When he saw that I had grown even bigger than before, a broad smile spread across his face. "Boys, give me a hand loading up my big black ox. After that, I'll treat you all to a good meal." No matter how hard I struggled, they grabbed me by the horns and dragged me out of the barn. The moment I saw the huge truck with an iron cage on it, my blood ran cold. If it had been a small van, I might have been able to try tipping it over and escaping. But a caged truck like this crushed my hopes into pieces. Still, when they forced me inside, I noticed that they hadn't put a padlock on the cage. It was held shut by nothing more than a latch. That was undoubtedly my last chance to get away. The truck started moving. The vehicle shook violently, and I stared at that latch without taking my eyes off it. If I could knock it loose, I would be saved. But the giant was sitting in the driver's cab, glancing into the rearview mirror from time to time. I didn't dare make the slightest move. The truck entered a mountain road, and the jolts became even more violent. Taking advantage of a moment when the driver was focused on the road, I quietly pressed one horn against the latch and began pushing it little by little. But just as the latch was about to give way, the driver slammed on the brakes. "Hey boss, can't you watch where you're driving?" Through the bars of the cage, I saw a van blocking the road. 3 shady-looking men got out, cigarettes dangling from their mouths. "Boss Lee, is that really you? It's been a long time." The man with the sinister smile walked up to the cab. The burly man's face darkened. "Lao Dao, what do you want?" "Oh, nothing special. I just heard you had a fine ox, so I wanted to take a look." As he spoke, Lao Dao walked toward the back of the truck. I immediately crouched down in the cage and put on the most obedient look I could manage. "Tisk, tisk. This ox is a real beast. He's got to weigh at least 400 kilos. Lao Dao slapped the iron cage, his eyes gleaming with greed. The burly man hurriedly climbed down. "Lao Dao, this ox has already been sold to the slaughterhouse. Don't get any ideas." "Sold to the slaughterhouse? What a waste!" Lao Dao crushed his cigarette underfoot, leaned close to the burly man's ear, and whispered a few words. The man's expression grew darker and darker. In the end, he clenched his teeth and said, "Deal, but you'll have to add more money." My heart tightened. Those 2 humans were making a deal right in front of me. But at that moment, Lao Dao suddenly pointed at the latch and said, "Boss Lee, how come this cage isn't locked?" The burly man froze for a moment. Just as he was about to speak, I gathered all my strength and slammed violently into the latch. Crack! The latch snapped clean in 2. The cage door flew open, and I charged out, leaping straight from the truck. Damn it! The ox escaped! I heard Lao Dao's furious roar behind me, but I had already plunged into the woods by the roadside. I ran for my life, deeper and deeper into the forest. Behind me, I could hear the burly man and Lao Dao cursing. "Hurry! Go after him! That damned ox cost me 30,000! Lao Dao's voice was getting closer and closer. I galloped at top speed on all 4 legs. Branches scratched across my body, leaving a burning pain behind. But after only a short while, I felt my strength leaving me. Damn it. Months of grazing on grass had clearly not given me enough energy. Just as I was about to collapse, a strong smell of blood suddenly drifted toward me from ahead. I followed the scent, and to my surprise, I found a dead wild boar lying in a bush. It didn't seem to have been dead for long. Panting, I stared at the boar's carcass. My mind spun wildly. The system had told me that eating would make me stronger, but it had never actually said I had to limit myself to grass. The footsteps behind me were getting closer. I no longer had time to hesitate. To hell with decency. This was all or nothing. I lowered my head, opened my mouth, and bit into the boar's bloody flesh. I tore off a huge chunk and stuffed it into my mouth. Blood and a metallic taste instantly flooded my mouth. Forcing down the nausea, I swallowed. In the very next second, system notifications rang out wildly. Wild boar devoured. Gained 50 points of high energy. Constitution increased by 5 points. Strength increased by 8 points. Weight increased by 50 kilo. I was stunned. A single mouthful of meat was more effective than a whole month of grass. Without wasting another second, I began frantically tearing the boar apart and swallowing huge mouthfuls. With every piece I ate, burning power surged through my body. My muscles swelled at a terrifying speed. There he is! Lao Dao's voice exploded behind me. I spun around and saw 3 men running toward me, hunting rifles aimed in my direction. The burly man followed behind them, his face blank. Lao Dao, don't shoot! If you damage the meat, it won't be worth anything anymore. Worth my ass. If this bastard gets away, I'll be the one losing 30,000. Lao Dao raised his shotgun, the dark barrel aimed straight at me. My heart clenched. I immediately grabbed the rest of the boar in my mouth and bolted. Bang! The bullet grazed my rear leg and sent dirt flying. I ran even faster. I clenched the boar's carcass tightly in my mouth and refused to let go. It was my only means of survival. There was no way I was abandoning it. After running for another 10 minutes or so, I finally managed to shake off Lao Dao. I hid inside a cave, dropped the boar, and began panting loudly. The system notification rang out again. Current weight, 900 Jin. Constitution, 32. Strength, 45. Detection. The host is continuously consuming high-energy flesh. The body has begun a mutation reaction. A mutation? I lowered my head to look at my body and realized that a thin layer of black keratin had begun to form across the surface of my skin. My forelegs had clearly grown thicker and sturdier, with muscles standing out in sharp definition. I scraped the ground with my hoof and dug a hole into stone with hardly any effort at all. My strength had more than doubled. Thrilled, I continued devouring the boar carcass. I quickly swallowed everything that remained. Boar consumption complete. Weight has exceeded 1,000 Jin. Strength has exceeded 50 points. Bodily mutation accelerating. Skin hardening increased by 30%. I felt incredible power coursing through my body. The weakness I had felt earlier had completely disappeared. But at that very moment, barking echoed from outside the cave. My heart tightened. That bastard had brought hunting dogs to track me down. And sure enough, not long after, 3 ferocious hunting dogs burst into the cave, their fangs bared as they lunged at me with snarls. The lead dog was enormous, over 1 meter tall, and its eyes shone with savage light. Tear him apart! Lao Dao's voice came from outside. All 3 dogs attacked at the same time, their jaws aimed straight for my throat. But this time, I didn't run. I let out a low growl and suddenly raised a front hoof, smashing it violently into the lead dog. Boom! A dull crash rang out. The dog went flying into the cave wall with a howl and died instantly. The other 2 dogs froze, fear flashing in their eyes, but I was already in a frenzy. I charged and drove my horn into the second dog's belly with savage force. The third dog, terrified, turned to flee, but I shattered its spine with a single hoof strike. Outside, I heard Lao Dao's panicked voice. That's not an ox anymore, that damned monster! Run! As I stared at the 3 dog corpses on the ground, a crazy thought suddenly crossed my mind. If eating boar made me stronger, then what about hunting dogs? I lowered my head and bit into the biggest dog, the one that had led the pack. I tore off a large chunk of flesh and stuffed it into my mouth. Hunting dog devoured and mutated. High energy plus 80. Strength plus 12. Constitution plus 10. Agility plus 5. My eyes lit up. These dogs carried even more energy than the boar. I sped up and frantically devoured the corpses of all 3 dogs. Devouring complete. Current weight, 1,200 Jin. Strength, 78. Constitution, 65. Agility, 30. Detection. The host's constitution has reached the critical threshold for mutation. Deep bodily mutation beginning. The instant those words were spoken, the skin across my entire body began to burn intensely. It felt as though countless ants were devouring me alive. I rolled on the ground in pain, gritting my teeth to keep from screaming. After about 10 minutes, the burning finally faded. I struggled to my feet and looked down at my body. I was utterly dumbfounded. A layer of black bony keratin had grown over the surface of my skin. It was unbelievably hard to the touch, as if I were wearing armor. On top of that, 7 or 8 sharp bone spikes had erupted along my spine, each around 15 centimeters long. In the dim cave, they gleamed with a freezing light. When I shook my head, I realized my bullhorns had thickened too, their tips as sharp as daggers. While I was still in shock, Lao Dao's voice rang out from outside. "Boss Lee, are you sure that thing is in there?" I saw it go in with my own eyes. There's no way it escaped. The burly man's voice trembled. He was clearly terrified by what he had seen earlier. "Fine then. Don't blame me if I show no mercy. That filthy thing killed 3 of my hunting dogs. Today, it dies." After Lao Dao spoke, I heard a scraping sound, as if he were preparing something. I stared at the cave entrance, every muscle in my body tensed. Then, in the next instant, something spitting sparks was thrown inside. Dynamite. I leaped backward, instantly turned, and ran deeper into the cave. Boom. A deafening explosion shook the entire cavern. Debris rained down in a furious storm. The blast wave hurled me to the ground. Several sharp rocks struck my back, but I felt only slight pain. That bone armor had blocked most of the damage. I struggled back to my feet and discovered that the cave entrance had partially collapsed. "Is it dead?" Lao Dao asked from outside. "It has to be. With a blast like that, even a bear would have died," the burly man replied in relief. A savage glint flashed through my eyes when I heard them. "Blow me up? Keep dreaming." I let out a low growl and hurled myself at the half-collapsed entrance. Rocks and dirt couldn't stop me. I smashed through the rubble with brute force and charged out of the cave. The sunlight dazzled me, forcing me to squint. When I could finally see clearly, Lao Dao and the burly man were already frozen in place. "What is that monster?" Lao Dao stammered, as he stared at the spikes and armor covering my body. He could barely even hold his shotgun anymore. As for the burly man, he had collapsed to the ground, a dark, wet stain spreading through his trousers. I shook the dust from my head and walked toward them step by step. Lao Dao finally snapped out of it, raised his gun, and fired 3 times at me. Every bullet struck my armor, producing only a few sparks without even scratching my skin. Lao Dao completely lost his nerve. He dropped the gun and turned to run. "Lao Dao, don't leave me behind!" the burly man cried. He tried to stand and follow, but his legs gave out beneath him from fear, and he fell heavily back to the ground. I walked over and looked down at him from above. This man had raised me for months. True, it had been to sell me, but at least he had never abused me. I stared at him for a few seconds. Then I turned and went after the fleeing Lao Dao instead. That bastard had trapped me, and he thought he could walk away. My 4 hooves hammered the ground, and my speed was astonishing. In only a few moments, I had caught up to Lao Dao. He turned and saw me, then froze in sheer terror. He lost his balance and tumbled down the slope. From the top of the hill, I watched him flailing in the thorns below, screaming, but I didn't chase him any farther. That was when the system notification rang out. The host has completed his first deadly counterattack against a human pursuer. Achievement unlocked. Break the chains. Bodily mutation stabilized. Official evolution into brutal armored buffalo. New mission, explore the wildlands. Devour stronger creatures. Exceed 2,000 jinn. I lifted my head and looked toward the distant mountain range. A gleam of excitement shone in my eyes. I could no longer return to the human world. So from now on, I would carve my own path through this savage wilderness by force. I turned my back on the slope and left without a second glance, disappearing into the dense forest while the burly man's cries echoed behind me, though I no longer paid them any attention. The system notification sounded again. Current status, brutal armored buffalo. Weight, 1 to 200 jinn. Strength, 78. Constitution, 65. Agility, 30. Reach 2,000 jinn to unlock a new form. The host is advised to seek out high-energy prey. I flicked my tail and quickened my pace deeper into the forest. If I wanted to become stronger, I needed to find fiercer prey. After about an hour of walking, the trees grew denser and denser. Sunlight barely filtered through, and the air was thick with a damp, rotten smell. The ground was littered with droppings and animal carcasses. I raised my ears and stayed on guard. This was obviously the territory of some large beast. At that moment, the bushes ahead rustled. I froze in place, every muscle tensed, as a colossal wild boar burst out of the forest. Its tusks were enormous, and its eyes were bloodshot. This boar was far bigger than the one I had eaten before, probably weighing between 400 and 500 jin. The instant it saw me, it let out an enraged grunt and prepared to charge. I didn't retreat. On the contrary, I charged first. The two hulking beasts slammed into each other head-on with a heavy crash. The boar's tusks dug into my armor, leaving behind nothing more than 2 shallow scratches. I seized the opening, lowered my head, and viciously gored it with my horns. It let out a scream of pain, blood spraying out. With one powerful jerk of my head, I hurled it to the ground. The boar tried to get back up, but I shattered its neck with a single hoof strike. Large wild boar killed, gained 120 points of high energy. Without the slightest hesitation, I began devouring it. Flesh and still warm blood filled my mouth, and that familiar wave of intense heat surged through me again. Weight increased by 150 jin. Strength increased by 15 points. Constitution increased by 12 points. Current weight, 1,350 jin. 650 jin remaining before evolution. I was in the middle of my feast when I suddenly heard rustling all around me. I jerked my head up and discovered that I was surrounded by 7 or 8 pairs of glowing green eyes. A wolf pack. The wolf leading the pack was exceptionally large, with grey-black fur, a savage gaze, and saliva dripping from its jaws. The other wolves spread out to encircle me, closing in little by little. I swallowed the meat in my mouth, let out a low growl, and took a fighting stance. Clearly, the pack saw me as an intruder who had stolen their prey. The pack leader howled, and the other wolves immediately attacked from all sides. I spun around and kicked one of the wolves attacking my hind legs, sending it flying. Another wolf bit at my neck, but its fangs shattered against my armor. Howling in pain, it let go, and I seized the chance to lift it on my horns and smash it into the ground. But the pack's coordination was flawless. The moment one wolf was driven back, another filled its place. My strength began to drain away, and my breathing grew more and more ragged. Then the pack leader suddenly lunged in from the side, its claws aimed directly at my eyes. I had no time to dodge, and could only turn my head to block with my horns. Its claws ripped across my cheek, carving a deep gash. Blood sprayed instantly. I roared in pain, completely enraged. To hell with it, today it was either them or me. Gathering all my strength, I charged the leader with the bone spikes on my back. But the pack leader moved with terrifying speed and twisted aside in midair. A wolf behind it wasn't so lucky, and was impaled clean through by my spikes, dying on the spot. When the others saw one of their own die so brutally, fear flashed in their eyes. The pack's momentum visibly weakened. I seized the chance to charge the nearest wolf and crush its skull beneath one hoof. Seeing the situation turning bad, the pack leader let out a long howl and retreated with the rest of the pack. I remained there, out of breath and covered in blood, unable to tell whether it was mine or the wolves. 3 wild wolves eliminated. High energy gained. 180. Serious injury detected. Immediate consumption of flesh and blood is recommended to restore stamina. I looked at the 2 wolf corpses on the ground, and at what remained of the boar I hadn't finished eating. Without hesitation, I started devouring them. As I swallowed flesh, my wounds began to tingle and heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Weight has exceeded 1,750 kilo. Strength has exceeded 100 points. Armor hardness improved. Bone spike length increased. I felt my body overflowing with power. All my earlier exhaustion vanished. But then wolf howls rang out in the distance once more, and there were more than twice as many this time. My heart tightened. Those filthy beasts had gone to bring reinforcements. I couldn't stay here. I had to find shelter fast. I seized the remaining half of the boar in my mouth and plunged deeper into the forest. Behind me, the howls were getting closer. This time, they were determined to finish me off. I ran with all my strength, the boar carcass clamped in my jaws. The howls behind me followed like a shadow. Through a break in the trees, I glimpsed at least a dozen wolves on my trail, led by the same pack leader as before. That bastard really knew how to hold a grudge. I galloped between the trees at full speed, branches lashing constantly against my body and armor with shrill scraping sounds. But the pack was faster, and the distance between us kept shrinking. Just as I was about to be caught, a clearing suddenly appeared. I burst out of the forest and found myself on a pebble beach strewn with massive boulders, with a small stream cutting through the middle. Without thinking, I rushed into the rocks, the wolves right behind me. A dozen wolves surrounded me from every side, cutting off all retreat. The pack leader stood atop a boulder, staring down at me with bloodthirsty eyes. It raised its head and gave a long howl, and the pack launched its assault at once. This time, they had learned. No more attacking alone. They coordinated in groups of 3 or 5. 3 wolves lunged at my left flank at the same time. The moment I turned to face them, 2 more bit into my rear right leg. I shook my leg to throw them off, but a wolf attacking from the front knocked me down. 4 or 5 wolves immediately piled onto me, their sharp claws frantically tearing at my armor. My armor was strong, but it couldn't withstand so many simultaneous attacks and began to crack. I struggled like mad. I skewered one of the wolves on my back with the spikes along my spine. Taking advantage of the pack's brief recoil, I sprang up and charged the nearest wolf, driving my horns violently into its chest. With one savage jerk, I hurled it against a boulder, but I didn't even have time to catch my breath before the pack leader had already leapt down from the rock, aiming for my throat. I barely dodged in time, but its claws still left 3 bloody slashes across my face. I roared in fury and spun around to kick violently at it. The leader twisted in midair and landed on its feet with terrifying agility. The other wolves used that moment to surround me again. My energy was draining at a terrifying rate. Then, one wolf bit into my front leg, while another lunged for my eyes. I shook my head with all my strength, and my horn ripped one wolf open, spilling its entrails onto the ground. But the one clamped onto my leg wouldn't let go. Its fangs had already pierced my armor and sunk into my flesh. The pain drove me mad. I lifted my front leg and smashed it down hard onto the ground. The wolf's skull cracked apart, and only then did it release me. You have killed a wild wolf. You gained 60 points of high energy. Detection. The host is seriously injured. Immediate energy replenishment recommended. I was panting heavily. I looked at the 3 wolf corpses on the ground, lowered my head without hesitation, and began devouring their still warm flesh. That tingling sensation returned around my wounds. When the wolves saw me eating one of their own right in front of them, both fear and fury flashed in their eyes. The pack leader howled again, and the rest of the wolves threw themselves at me. This time, they were fighting for real, with no regard for their own lives. 4 or 5 wolves brought me down at once. Their claws and fangs tore at me without pause. My armor finally gave way and shattered in multiple places. Blood sprayed from the cracks. I felt my consciousness beginning to blur and my body growing heavier and heavier. Was this the end? Was I going to die here? That was when the system notification rang out. Detection. The host's life is in critical danger. Emergency evolution mode activated. Forced combustion of all bodily energy. Fury state activated. In the next instant, all the blood in my body began to boil. An unprecedented force burst up from the depths of my being. It exploded outward, and I let out a roar powerful enough to shake the sky. I surged upright in one motion, hurling away all the wolves crushing me beneath them. My eyes turned blood red. The bone spikes on my back grew frantically, shooting from 15 centimeters to over 30. The cracks in my shell began to close, and it became even thicker and more durable, gleaming with a metallic sheen. I charged the nearest wolf and crushed its skull with one blow of my hoof. Another wolf sprang at me, but I skewered it on my horns and flung it into the rocks, killing it instantly. I was like a demonic beast drunk on blood, and everywhere I passed, wolves fell one after another. But then the Wolf King lifted its head and released a piercing, shrill howl. Immediately, its body began to swell. The muscles beneath its fur bulged to the limit. Its eyes turned even redder. Its fangs doubled in length, and its whole body grew by nearly a third. So that filthy beast could enter berserk mode too. Once enraged, the Wolf King moved even faster. I didn't even have time to react before it was already on top of me, its claws aimed directly at my throat. I twisted my head in a desperate struggle for survival, but it still raked 3 bloody slashes across my neck. The pain forced me backward, but the Wolf King gave me no chance to recover. It leapt again, this time biting into my front leg. Its fangs pierced my shell and sank deep into my flesh. I shook my leg frantically, but I couldn't throw it off. The Wolf King clung on stubbornly, tearing and ripping without pause, trying to rip my leg off altogether. The pain was so intense, I could barely stay standing. I could feel my bones creaking under the pressure. No, I had to get rid of it. I suddenly lifted my other front leg and slammed it down on its head with all my strength. Once, twice, 3 times. At last, the Wolf King let go and stumbled back a few steps. I seized the chance, lowered my head, and charged with the spikes still left on my back. The Wolf King tried to dodge, but the blows it had already taken had slowed its reflexes. My spikes drove into its shoulder. I pushed with every bit of strength I had. Crack! Its shoulder blade was pierced through. It let out a horrible scream and struggled desperately to escape. I did not let go, forcing it step by step toward the edge of the ravine. Its hind legs were already hanging over empty air. One more push and it would fall. But at that precise moment, the Wolf King opened its jaws and bit into my neck. It wanted to drag me into death with it. Its fangs pierced my shell and sank into my veins. Hot blood spurted out. My consciousness began to blur, and my body grew heavier and heavier. No, I could not die here. Gritting my teeth, I made a superhuman effort and flung it into the air with my horns. The Wolf King flew upward in a great arc before crashing heavily onto the rocks below. I staggered backward, nearly falling myself, then collapsed onto the ground, gasping. The wound in my neck wouldn't stop bleeding. System notification. Mutant Wolf King eliminated. 500 points of high energy obtained. Skill acquired. Bloodthirsty Fury. Weight has exceeded 2,000 pounds. Strength has exceeded 150 points. Agility has exceeded 80 points. The body has begun a deep evolution. Warning, please replenish energy as soon as possible. I struggled to my feet and limped to the edge of the canyon. The Wolf King's corpse lay below. Even if the fall had smashed it into a pulp, there was still plenty left to eat. I carefully climbed down into the canyon and reached the Wolf King's body. Even dead, that filthy beast was enormous, at least 600 or 700 pounds. Without a moment's hesitation, I began devouring it. The still warm flesh and blood entered my mouth, and that familiar heat spread through my body once more. The wound on my neck began to close, and my broken bone spines started to reform. I fed frantically, though I stopped before eating more than half of the Wolf King's corpse. Devouring complete. Current weight, 2,200 pounds. Strength, 180. Constitution, 150. Agility, 90. Armor evolved into heavy armor. Defense increased by 200%. Bone spikes evolved into sharp bone spines. Penetration increased by 3%. I felt my body brimming with power. Every trace of weakness had vanished. When I lifted my head, I saw around 10 wolves standing at the top of the canyon. Their eyes were fixed on me, filled with a mixture of respect and fear. I let out a deep rumble, and the pack immediately bowed down, trembling all over. From today onward, this forest was my territory. After finishing the Wolf King, I took command of the submissive pack and returned to the depths of the forest. Over the following days, I frantically hunted every beast in the area. My weight stabilized at 2,200 pounds. Every animal in the forest sensed my presence and fell silent. I thought I would be able to continue evolving in peace, but I never expected the humans to come after me again. That day, I was drinking by a stream when I suddenly heard the distant thrum of helicopters. I raised my head and looked up warily. 3 helicopters were flying in my direction. I immediately turned and ran deeper into the forest. But the helicopters were faster, and they caught up to me in no time. A huge metal net dropped from the sky. I didn't have time to dodge and was caught full on. The net was electrified. Violent current surged through my whole body at once. Convulsing in pain, my 4 legs gave out, and I collapsed heavily to the ground. The helicopters landed, and 7 or 8 heavily armed men jumped out. At their head was a giant with a shaved head, carrying an electric baton and a tranquilizer pistol at his waist. One look was enough to tell he was a professional squad leader. So this is the mutant ox Lao Dao was talking about. A young soldier stepped forward, his eyes filled with astonishment. The bald leader nodded, pulled out his walkie-talkie and said, "Dr. Su, target captured. Awaiting your orders." A woman's excited voice came through the radio. "Perfect. Bring it back to the Institute immediately. I want to personally study these mutant genes." The moment I heard those words, my heart tightened. The Institute was a place that specialized in capturing mutant creatures. The bald leader gave a signal, and several of his men immediately pulled out tranquilizer guns and kept firing at me. Hypodermic needles sank into my skin. The anesthetic was so strong that my consciousness began to fade. I tried to struggle with all my strength, but there was no way to free myself from the metal net. My body grew heavier and heavier. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, a system notification suddenly rang out. Warning detected. Large dose of anesthetic injected. Forced metabolism in progress. Estimated time for full recovery, 3 hours. The host is advised to simulate unconsciousness and wait for an opportunity to escape. I immediately stopped struggling. I closed my eyes and pretended to faint. The bald leader walked over and jabbed me with his electric baton to make sure I was really unconscious. Then he let out a sigh of relief. "Put it in the transport cage. Hurry up." Several team members joined forces to lift me into a huge titanium alloy cage. The cage was then fastened beneath the helicopter with a winch. The helicopter took off. Through my half-closed eyelids, I watched the mountains and forest growing farther and farther away. After about an hour of flying, the helicopter finally landed. I was taken into a massive underground base. Everyone around me wore white researcher coats. A woman in her 30s approached. She was Dr. Sue, the woman I had heard over the radio earlier. She wore gold-rimmed glasses, and her eyes shone with fanatical light. Perfect. This is the most complete mutation specimen I've ever seen. Dr. Sue circled the cage while a nurse took notes in a notebook. Chief, transfer it to laboratory number 3. Prepare the genetic extraction. The bold leader nodded and ordered his men to push the cage into an even larger room. The place was filled with all kinds of instruments and equipment. At the center stood a huge metal operating table. My heart began to pound wildly. These people were going to dissect me. Dr. Sue walked up to the cage and pulled out a syringe filled with green liquid. First, inject the gene stabilizer so it won't go berserk during the experiment. As she said that, she prepared to open the cage. But at that exact moment, I suddenly opened my eyes. The system had already metabolized the anesthetic. I could move now. I let out a furious roar and slammed into the cage door. Titanium alloy might be strong, but it couldn't withstand my 100 kilo weight and 180 points of strength. Crack! The cage door warped under the impact. Dr. Sue staggered back in terror. It's awake! Quick, the electric baton! The bold leader reacted instantly, raising his electric baton and rushing at me. But I was already out of the cage. With one kick of my hoof, I sent him flying into the wall, where he collapsed unconscious. The other team members pulled out their tranquilizer rifles and fired at me in bursts. The darts struck my shell and bounced right off. I charged the nearest soldier and sent him flying with a single blow of my horn. The entire laboratory descended into chaos. Researchers fled in every direction. Dr. Sue, trembling, hid behind a machine and slammed the red button on the wall. A deafening alarm sounded. The laboratory doors shut automatically. Right after that, around 10 high-voltage nets dropped from the ceiling, trapping me in the middle. The moment the current was activated, another brutal electric shock surged through my body. The pain made me convulse, but I gritted my teeth and refused to collapse. Seeing this, Dr. Sue's eyes shone with madness. Perfect. Its resistance to electricity is even higher than expected. A specimen like this is an invaluable treasure. As she spoke, she walked to a cabinet and took out several large syringes filled with blue liquid. Since ordinary anesthetics don't work, let's try this high-concentration genetic enhancement serum. It's enough to plunge any creature into a deep sleep. She raised the syringe and approached me step by step. I struggled with all my strength, but I was trapped in the electric net, completely immobilized and unable to move. Just as the syringe was about to pierce my skin, I suddenly activated bloodthirsty fury. The moment it activated, all the blood in my veins began to boil. My eyes turned crimson, my muscles swelled at a terrifying speed, and my power exploded to 300 points. I let out a deafening roar and shattered the high-voltage net with a single blow. Sparks flew everywhere as the net burst apart. All the lights in the lab started flickering. Dr. Sue jumped in terror. The syringe fell to the ground, spilling blue liquid across the floor. I lunged at the nearest machine and smashed it apart with my horns. Equipment worth a fortune was like papier-mâché in front of me, and was reduced to twisted scrap in an instant. Quick, stop it! Don't let it destroy the equipment, Dr. Sue screamed. But the remaining team members didn't even dare approach. I kept destroying everything in the laboratory in a frenzy. Cabinets, instruments, the operating table, I smashed it all. Then I spotted a huge freezer in one corner, filled with potions of every color. I rushed at it and smashed the door open with a headbutt. Dozens of vials fell out, red, blue, green, even purple. Dr. Sue went deathly pale at the sight. No, those are high-concentration genetic serums. It absolutely must not swallow them. But it was already too late. I lowered my head, caught a purple vial between my teeth, bit down, shattered the glass, and swallowed everything in one gulp. The moment the liquid entered my mouth, it sent an intense burning sensation from my throat all the way to my brain. Absorbed high-concentration genetic enhancement serum. Obtained 800 high-energy points. Constitution increased by 50 points. Strength increased by 60 points. Agility increased by 40 points. I felt my body overflowing with power. The effect of this serum was even stronger than devouring the Wolf King. Without hesitation, I continued swallowing the other potions. Red, blue, green. I stuffed all of them into my mouth. Dr. Sue completely collapsed to her knees, despair written all over her face. It's over. It's all over. Those serums were worth hundreds of millions. The Institute is going to go bankrupt. But I paid her no attention and continued my frenzy. Absorption complete. Current weight 2500 Jin. Strength 280. Constitution 220. Agility 150. Energy overload detected in the host. Metamorphosis sleep imminent. The moment the voice faded, my eyelids grew heavier and heavier. My body was slipping out of my control. These chemicals were having a strange effect. I staggered, trying to rush out of the laboratory. but my legs had turned to cotton. I couldn't summon the slightest bit of strength. Bang! I crashed heavily to the floor. My consciousness began to fade. When Dr. Sue saw this, hope flared again in her eyes. Quick, take advantage of the fact that it's unconscious. Inject it with anesthetic and immobilize it. The bold captain got back up, clutching his chest. Several agents aimed their tranquilizer rifles at me and opened fire, but the darts that hit me couldn't even pierce my skin. My heavy armor, under the influence of those agents, had become even more resistant, gleaming with metallic light. The bald captain clenched his teeth, pulled out his walkie-talkie, and ordered, "Bring in a transport vehicle. Move it while it's still out cold." About 10 minutes later, an enormous transport vehicle entered the laboratory. Inside was a specially designed titanium alloy cage, surrounded by high-voltage generators. The agents joined forces to haul me inside, then used special restraints to shackle all 4 of my limbs. Dr. Sue stepped forward and stroked my shell, her eyes full of fanatic devotion. It's perfection. The hardness of this shell already surpasses that of any known metal. If we can decipher its genetic code, human technology will take a giant leap forward. Then she turned to the bald captain and said, "Take it to the special laboratory on the 3rd underground floor. That's where the most advanced dissection equipment is. I want to study it personally." The transport vehicle started moving, taking me even deeper underground. Darkness thickened around me, and the air was heavy with the sharp smell of disinfectant. I could feel my body undergoing a radical transformation. My skeleton was reorganizing, my muscles were developing, and my shell was evolving. The system's voice kept echoing in my mind. Metamorphosis progress, 10%, 30%, 50%. Estimated time until ultimate metamorphosis complete, 3 hours. Evolution, abyssal demon bull. Once metamorphosis is complete, the host will obtain city-destroying power. Immediate escape recommended. The transport vehicle stopped, and I was pushed into a gigantic laboratory. This place was at least 10 times larger than the previous one. Terrifying instruments and devices were everywhere. At the center stood an enormous metal operating table, laid out with sharp scalpels and electric saws. Dr. Sue entered, followed by around 10 researchers. He looked at me lying inside the cage, an excited smile on his lips. "Prepare the dissection. I want to see what it's made of inside. What exactly makes it so special?" The researchers began preparing all kinds of tools. Electric saws, scalpels, sample extractors, everything was placed on the operating table. Captain Bould approached, looking somewhat uneasy. "Dr. Sue, that thing was unbelievably vicious earlier. What if it wakes up?" Dr. Sue gave a disdainful little laugh. "Relax. The agents we injected are enough to keep it asleep for 3 days and 3 nights. Besides, this cage is made from the strongest titanium alloy there is. Even a battle tank couldn't force it open." As he spoke, he walked up to the cage and tapped the bars. "And even if it did wake up, we're on the 3rd underground floor. There are 30 heavily armed security agents all around. It has no chance of escaping." What he didn't know was that I had been conscious the entire time, and that the system was helping me accelerate my metamorphosis. I only needed to hold on for 2 more hours, and once my evolution was complete, a mere titanium alloy cage would never be able to hold me. With my eyes closed, I remained lying in the cage, pretending to be unconscious. The system kept ringing in my mind. Metamorphosis progress, 70%, 80%. I could feel every bone in my body rearranging itself. The density of my muscles was increasing at a terrifying speed. Dr. Sue walked up to the cage, pulled out a tablet, and scanned me. Strange. Its body temperature keeps rising, and its heart rate is accelerating. Those aren't the signs of someone in a coma. He frowned, turned to the bold captain, and said, "Inject another dose of anesthetic, just to be safe." The bold captain nodded, picked up an enormous syringe, and approached. Just as he was about to open the cage, the system notification suddenly rang out. Metamorphosis progress 100%. Evolution complete. Current form, abyssal demon bull. Weight, 3,000 kilograms. Strength, 400. Constitution, 350. Agility, 200. New skills unlocked. Devastating charge. Infernal trample. Terror roar. I suddenly opened my eyes. A red glow. Fear shines in my eyes. The bold captain's hand trembles as the syringe falls to the ground. I let out a furious roar, and the shockwave spreads like a wave of stone. The entire laboratory begins to shake. Skill, Roar of Terror activated. All the creatures brought in are plunged into a state of sheer terror. Dr. Sue and the researchers collapse to the ground, their eyes filled with dread. Even though he is a professional security agent, the bald captain is completely terrified. His face pale, his legs wobble. I straighten up suddenly. The special handcuffs shatter before me, as if they were made of papier-mâché. I throw myself against the bars. The titanium alloy cage lets out a piercing screech of twisting metal. Crack, crack! The bars begin to deform. Cracks appear one after another. Dr. Sue, seeing this scene, collapses completely. Impossible. That's titanium alloy. How could it yield? Reality strikes him right in the face. I push once more. The cage explodes, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. I emerge from the rubble, exuding an aura of terrifying power. My size has almost doubled. My heavy armor has turned a deep black with sinister reflections. The bony spikes on my back have become veritable blades, each measuring nearly 2 feet long with incredible sharpness. My horns have also grown thicker, their tips gleaming with an icy glow, as if they could pierce through anything. The bald captain gets up with difficulty and pulls out his walkie-talkie, trembling. All security units, proceed immediately to the laboratory on the 3rd basement level. The subject is out of control. I repeat, the subject is out of control. He barely finishes his sentence when the laboratory door is smashed open. 30 heavily armed security agents burst in, submachine guns and rocket launchers in hand. Leading them is a man in his 40s, the chief of security. Seeing me, a look of shock crosses his eyes, but he quickly regains his composure. To everyone, listen to my orders. Fire at will. Take down the target at all costs. Bang, bang! A hail of bullets rains down on me, but they only produce sparks as they strike my armor. My defense has been multiplied after the evolution. Ordinary bullets can't even scratch me. I charge at the nearest agents. I launch my devastating charge. Skill. Devastating charge annihilates all obstacles in its path. Everything is destroyed. I am like an out-of-control tank. Everywhere I pass, it's absolute chaos. Several security guards are thrown into the air. They crash heavily against the wall, knocked unconscious on the spot. The face of the captain of the 8th unit changes. He immediately orders the use of rocket launchers. 2 guards shoulder their rocket launchers. They fire 2 rockets at me, whistling in my direction and leaving a trail of fire. But I don't dodge. Boom, boom! 2 deafening explosions. The flames of the explosion engulf me. Dr. Sue watches. A glimmer of hope shines in his eyes upon seeing this scene. Is he dead? However, the next second, I emerge from the flames without a single scratch on my body. My overpowered defense is already strong enough to take rockets head on. The captain of the 8th unit completely panics. He has never seen such a terrifying creature. Fall back immediately! But it was already too late. I launch the infernal sword tower. I suddenly raise my front hoof and slam it violently onto the ground. Boom! A massive noise. The whole laboratory shakes violently. Cracks appear on the floor. The shockwave spreads, knocking more than a dozen guards off balance. They all fall down. I take the opportunity to charge, using my horns to toss one into the air, my hooves to crush another, and my dew claws to impale a 3rd. In just a few minutes, more than half of the 30 guards are on the ground. The survivors completely lose their minds. They throw down their weapons and turn on their heels to flee. The captain of the 8th unit no longer cares about the others. He rushes desperately toward the exit. But how could I let him escape? With one leap, I block his path. The captain of the 8th unit looks at me, then closes his eyes in despair. I lift him with my horns and hurl him violently against the wall. He falls unconscious instantly. Throughout the laboratory, only Dr. Sue and a few researchers are left. They are all collapsed on the floor, trembling in every limb. I walk step by step toward Dr. Sue, my eyes filled with murderous intent. This woman wanted to dissect me. She almost killed me. Dr. Sue looks at me, tears streaming endlessly. I beg you spare me. I will never do it again. I stare at her for a few seconds. Finally, I turn on my heels and head toward the depths of the laboratory. Killing her would be too easy for her. Leaving her alive to watch her own research institute be reduced to ashes, that is the greatest punishment. I begin to frantically destroy everything in the lab. All the instruments and equipment are smashed to pieces by my charges. Those precious experimental samples are also trampled and annihilated. That's when I notice a massive glass cage in a corner. Inside, all kinds of mutant creatures are locked up. There are mutant snakes, mutant rats, and even a mutant black bear. Seeing me, their eyes fill with terror and desire. I approach, and with one strike of my hoof, I shatter the glass cage. These mutant creatures immediately rush out, fleeing in a mad panic. However, the mutant black bear does not flee. Instead, it lowers its head before me as a sign of submission. I see a glimmer of surprise in its eyes. This beast knows when to submit. The mutant black bear is prostrated on the ground, its eyes full of respectful fear. I size it up. The beast is massive. It must weigh over 500 kilos. Its bulging muscles form lumps all over its body. Clearly, the laboratory didn't spare it from injections. I let out a low growl. The mutant black bear immediately rises to stand behind me. Since it is so willing to submit, I might as well keep it. It could be useful to me one day. I turn back toward the depths of the laboratory, where there are still many rooms. Who knows what is hidden there? With the black bear at my heels, I smash everything in my path, tearing down doors one after another. Finally, I arrive at the deepest room. On the door, it reads, Central Energy Reserve, unauthorized access forbidden. I smash the door with a kick. The scene inside is astounding. The entire room is filled with immense culture vats. Each vat contains energy crystals of different colors. These crystals emit powerful waves of energy, much stronger than the products I had consumed before. A system notification chimes. High purity energy source detected. It is recommended to devour it immediately. Consuming it will allow you to exceed your current form's limits and evolve to a higher level. Without the slightest hesitation, I rush forward and smash the first vat with my horns. A blue energy crystal falls out. I swallow it in one gulp. The crystal instantly melts in my mouth. A terrifying energy explodes in my body. High purity energy crystal consumed. Gain of 2,000 energy points. Strength increased by 80 points. Constitution increased by 100 points. Agility increased by 60 points. I feel as though every cell in my body is exulting with joy. It is a sensation far more intoxicating than any food. I frantically smash the other vats. Red, green, purple, golden. I swallow them all. System notifications chime continuously. Current weight 1750 kilograms. Strength 580s. Constitution 550. Agility 320. Water energy overload detected. Beginning second body evolution. My thick armor begins to crack. A new, darker, and more resistant carapace emerges from the fissures. The bone spikes on my spine also start to grow, going from 70 centimeters to 1 meter long. Each glows with a dark red light. My horns become even more impressive. They reach over 1.5 meters, as thick as a man's thigh, with terrifyingly sharp tips. It's at that moment that the laboratory alarm starts blaring. Dr. Su's voice echoes through the loudspeakers, tinged with hysterical madness. Self-destruct procedure activated. If we can't hold him, then we will perish with him. Barely has her voice faded when the whole complex begins to shake. Red lights on the walls flash frantically. The countdown has begun. In 10 minutes, this place will be nothing more than ruins. My blood runs cold. I have to escape and fast. I turn around and dash toward the exit, the black bear close on my heels. But just as I reach the laboratory entrance, I see the captain of the 8th company, along with the remaining security agents. They block the passage. In their hands, they hold heavy machine guns, and several carry rocket launchers on their shoulders. The face of the 8th Company's captain is livid, and his eyes burn with unwavering determination. Dr. Su was clear. Even if it costs our lives, we must keep you here so you are buried with this laboratory. He barely finishes his sentence when everyone opens fire simultaneously. A hail of bullets rains down on me while the flamethrowers spew torrents of fire. I let out a roar of fury and unleash my roar of terror. But this time, the security guards are clearly prepared. They are wearing special earplugs. The effect of the fear is considerably reduced. I have no choice but to charge head-on through the bullets and flames. The bullets strike my armor, and although they cannot pierce it, the force of the impact slows my momentum. The flames burn my skin. It is unbearable. It isn't fatal, but the pain is intense. I launch my devastating charge like a tank. I hurl myself violently into the crowd. Several guards are thrown back and smash into the walls. Their fate is uncertain. But Captain H, facing me, does not retreat. He drops his machine gun and pulls out a remote control. Die, he screams, pressing the button. From the ceiling drop a dozen gigantic iron cages. They fall, imprisoning me in the center. The moment the cages hit the floor, they are electrified. A violent current once again surges through my entire body. But this time, my constitution has reached level 550. A simple electric shock can no longer do anything against me. I roar and unleash all my strength. I pry the cage bars apart with sheer brute force. Seeing this, despair shines in the eyes of Captain H. A monster! It's a monster! I rush at him, and with one kick, I send the remote control flying from his hand. Though I do not kill him. I charge straight toward the exit. The countdown shows 5 minutes remaining. We have to leave, fast. I take the black bear with me, and we sprint out of the laboratory, running like madmen down the corridor. But the Institute structure is a true labyrinth. There are forks and dead ends everywhere. I smash through doors one after another. I finally spot the elevator that leads to the surface, but it is out of service. Only the stairs remain. I dive into the stairwell, climbing the steps 4 at a time, the black bear following closely. Out of breath. Less than 3 minutes on the clock. I accelerate and finally reach the ground floor. But the exit is blocked by a massive titanium alloy door. Without hesitating, I launch my devastating charge. With a deafening crash, I punch a large hole through the titanium door and squeeze outside. I find myself in the middle of nature. There are only woods all around. Less than a minute left. I run with all my might, and the black bear follows me at top speed. 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. Boom! A deafening explosion rings out. The entire research institute is reduced to ashes. The shockwave spreads like a tsunami, throwing me into the air before I crash heavily to the ground. The black bear is also blown away by the explosion. It hits a large tree and loses consciousness. The area is now nothing but a blazing inferno. Thick black smoke obscures everything. Dr. Sue, Captain H, and all the other guards, they surely all perished in the blast. I breathe with difficulty. I am covered in wounds, but my eyes shine with excitement. I survived, and I have become stronger. A system notification appears. Escape from the Institute successful. Achievement unlocked. Ultimate survivor. Current weight 1750 kilos. Strength 5 AKs. Constitution 550. Agility 320. You have reached the rank of Abyssal Demon. In peak form, the system suggests finding stronger adversaries to push my limits. I look at the mountain ranges in the distance, a smile on my lips. Human weapons can no longer do anything against me. It's time to explore the depths of the wild nature. I carry the unconscious black bear with me and limp deep into the dense forest. My wounds are still bleeding, but the system helps me recover quickly. After about half an hour of walking, the black bear finally wakes up. It looks at me with eyes full of gratitude. Clearly, it knows I saved its life. I let out a low grunt, signaling it to follow me. Then I continue moving forward. Suddenly, a system notification rings. Detection of a large gathering of high-energy creatures 3 kilometers away. Recommendation: proceed with the hunt. My eyes light up, and I immediately quicken my pace. The further I go, the thicker the smell of blood in the air becomes. I finally arrive at a clearing. The sight before me leaves me in shock. The area is strewn with animal corpses: deer, wild boars, wolves, and even a few bears. And in the middle of this pile of bodies stand 7 or 8 mutant creatures of colossal size. Leading them is a mutant tiger, 3 times larger than an ordinary tiger. Its muscles bulge, and its eyes glow with a green light. Beside it are 2 mutant leopards, a mutant boar, and a few mutant wolves. These creatures clearly form a pack specialized in hunting in this area. Seeing me, a glimmer of wariness crosses the mutant tiger's eyes. It lets out a low growl, and the other mutant creatures immediately scatter to encircle me. I whip the air with my tail without the slightest fear. These creatures may be powerful, but they are no match for me. The mutant tiger launches the first attack. Its speed is lightning fast. It lunges at my throat. I dodge with a sidestep and violently plunge my horns into its abdomen. The mutant tiger performs a somersault in the air, narrowly dodging the fatal blow, but its flank is still slashed with a deep gash. After landing, it immediately backs away. A flash of fear is in its eyes. The 2 mutant leopards use the opportunity to attack my flanks. Their sharp claws aim straight for my eyes. I turn sharply, presenting the bony spikes on my back. One of the leopards is too slow. It is impaled by the spikes and dies on the spot. The other leopard, terrified, retreats, not daring to come closer. The mutant boar charges from behind, its tusks viciously aiming at my hind legs. I lift a hind leg and violently strike it on the head. A dull thud rings out. The boar's skull is shattered. It collapses to the ground, lifeless. In just a few seconds, I have eliminated 2 mutant creatures. The few remaining mutant wolves tremble with fear at the sight, absolutely not daring to advance. A glimmer of fury crosses the mutant tiger's eyes. It lets out a long roar toward the sky, and its body begins to swell. So this piece of trash could also enter a rage state. After entering its rage, the mutant tiger grows even larger. Its strength and speed explode. It throws itself at me again, so fast I barely have time to see it. Its sharp claws leave 3 deep slashes on my carapace. My defense almost breaks. Wincing in pain, I take a few steps back. A serious look crosses my eyes. This nasty beast must have quite the response. Taking advantage of its upper hand, the tiger shows no mercy and launches a frantic offensive. Its claws and fangs rain down on me like a downpour. My carapace is tough, but it cannot withstand its endless assaults. Cracks begin to appear. I can no longer drag this out. I have to end it quickly. I suddenly activate my bloodlust fury. My eyes turn blood red. My strength skyrockets to 800 points. I let out a furious roar and launch my devastating charge. The mutant tiger tries to dodge, but it realizes I am even faster than it. Boom! With a deafening crash, I hit it at full force. The mutant tiger is thrown into the air and crashes heavily against a large tree. The trunk snaps cleanly in 2. I seize the opportunity to rush at it and violently drive my horns into its chest. The mutant tiger lets out a blood-curdling scream. It struggles desperately, but cannot free itself from my horns. With a sharp tug, I slam it to the ground. The mutant tiger convulses a few times, then stops moving. The few remaining mutant wolves, seeing that the tiger is dead, panic and turn to flee. But how could I let them escape? I activate my velocity skill. I catch up to them in an instant. In the span of a few breaths, all the mutant wolves are slaughtered. I stand there in the middle of a pile of blood-covered corpses. The black bear approaches, its eyes filled with respect. I begin to devour the corpses of these mutant creatures. The still warm flesh and blood rekindle that familiar burning sensation in my body. Assimilation complete. Current weight 2100 kilo. Strength 650. Constitution 600. Agility 380. Detection. Host has reached the limit of the abyssal demonic buffalo. Evolution impossible. Suggestion. Host must find and assimilate a legendary creature to transcend racial limits. A legendary creature. What is that? The system doesn't answer. It simply makes an image appear in my mind. It is a wild, deeper land, where titanic ancient trees stand everywhere in a thick fog. And deep in the fog, massive silhouettes can be distinguished. It exudes a terrifying aura. Looking at this image, a flash of excitement shines in my eyes. It seems the real challenge is only just beginning. Just then, in the distance, the roar of a helicopter can be heard. I look up and see 3 combat helicopters flying in our direction. The Institute's logo is painted on their fuselages. Apparently, Dr. Sue is not dead, and she has even called for reinforcements. A hysterical voice echoes from the helicopter's loudspeakers. It is Dr. Sue's voice. "Filthy beast, you destroyed my institute and killed my men. Today, you are going to pay for it." Barely are these words spoken when the helicopter's machine guns begin to fire. A hail of bullets pours down, kicking up clouds of dust as they hit the ground. I immediately take cover behind a large tree. The black bear follows me, but the helicopter's firepower is too intense. The tree is quickly riddled with bullets. I have to find a way to counterattack. Otherwise, it's only a matter of time before I am gunned down. That's when I spot a massive boulder not far away. I dart out of my hiding spot and rush toward the boulder under a rain of bullets. The bullets smash against my armor without piercing it, but the force of the impacts slows my momentum. I grit my teeth and keep going. Finally reaching the boulder, I wedge it with my horns. With an immensely powerful heave, I lift it. It weighs several tons. I aim at the nearest helicopter and hurl the boulder with all my might. The enormous boulder flies toward the helicopter like a cannonball. Its speed is so staggering that the pilot doesn't even have time to react. The boulder slams right into the cockpit. Boom! The helicopter explodes in midair, turning into a fireball. The debris falls to the ground. Terrified, the other 2 helicopters immediately gain altitude. Not daring to get closer, Dr. Sue's voice echoes over the radio, filled with shock and fury. Shoot it down with missiles. Barely has she finished her sentence when both helicopters fire simultaneously. 4 missiles, leaving trails of fire behind them, speed straight toward my position. Straight at me. I immediately activate my super speed to dodge with all my might. Boom, 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 boom. 4 deafening explosions. The flames engulf the spot where I stood a second earlier. Everything is reduced to ashes for dozens of meters around. I have taken cover behind a huge rock, my body covered in dust, but I am unharmed. However, the helicopters don't stop their attack. 4 more missiles hurtle toward me. I grit my teeth. This can't go on. I have to find a way to take them down. My gaze lands on the black bear next to me. An idea germinates in my mind. I let out a low growl, signaling the bear to climb onto my back. Even though it doesn't understand my intentions, it obeys. With the bear on my back, I leave my cover and sprint straight toward the nearest redwood tree. The helicopter's machine gun immediately opens fire. The bullets ricochet off my body, sending sparks flying. Under the deluge of bullets, I reach the base of the tree and suddenly activate the infernal tower. A massive crash rings out. The tree shakes violently. Its roots begin to uproot. I wedge the trunk with my horns and push with all my strength. Crack, crack! The roots snap. The entire tree begins to topple directly toward one of the helicopters. The pilot, realizing the danger, attempts a desperate evasive maneuver. But it's too late. The tree crashes heavily onto the aircraft, and the helicopter's rotor blades get caught in the branches. The helicopter, now out of control, crashes. Boom! The aircraft hits the ground in an explosion of flames that lights up the sky. Dr. Sue is visibly terrified. Her voice, on the verge of tears, comes through the radio. Fall back. Fall back immediately. This creature is unkillable. The last helicopter immediately banks away to try and flee. But how could I let it get away? With the bear on my back, I dash toward another tree to repeat the operation. I bring down the tree again, sending it crashing towards the helicopter. But this time, the pilot reacts faster and manages to evade it. My heart clenches. Am I going to let it escape? It is at this exact moment that the black bear suddenly jumps off my back. In mid-air, it grabs a branch and uses the momentum to launch itself right onto the helicopter's landing gear. The bear only weighs 500 kilograms. The helicopter instantly loses its balance and begins to sway. The pilot fights desperately to stabilize it, but the black bear has already climbed onto the outside of the cockpit and is hammering the glass with its claws. The glass shatters. The black bear delivers a swipe to the pilot's face, who screams in pain and lets go of the controls. The helicopter is totally out of control. Boom. The helicopter crashes to the ground, and the flames of the explosion rise into the sky once again. The black bear jumped off just before the crash. Although its fall was a bit rough, it isn't seriously hurt. I approach and rub it with my snout as a sign of approval. This beast may not be very strong, but it is quite smart. Assault helicopter destroyed. You have obtained 500 higher energy points. Human armed pursuit successfully repelled. Achievement unlocked. Public enemy of humanity. Looking at the wreckage of the 3 helicopters, a cold glint crosses my eyes. Human weapons may be powerful, but against absolute force, they are nothing. At that moment, the roar of another engine sounds in the distance. I look up and see a massive armored vehicle hurtling in our direction. A massive cannon is mounted on the roof of the armored car. Its dark muzzle points right at me. The door opens. Captain Leon steps out, his body covered in bandages. He was clearly severely injured in the explosion, but he survived. He glares at me, his eyes full of hatred. Filthy beast, you've killed so many of my brothers. Today, I'm going to avenge them! Saying this, he presses a remote control, and the armored car's cannon immediately opens fire. Boom, boom, boom! The shells rain down, each with devastating power. I dodge with all my might, but the blast radius is too large. It's impossible to avoid everything. One explosion goes off right next to me. The colossal shockwave throws me into the air. I crash heavily to the ground. Several cracks appear on my armor. The firepower of this armored vehicle is far superior to that of the helicopters. I struggle to my feet, a fierce glint in my eyes. Since I can't dodge, I will face it head on. I activate Bloodlust Fury. My eyes turn blood red. My strength shoots up to 900 points. I let out a furious roar and launch my devastating charge straight at the armored vehicle. Seeing me charge at him, Captain Leon immediately orders to intensify the fire. The cannon goes wild, unleashing a deluge of shells. I advance, absorbing the barrage. The cracks on my armor multiply. Blood seeps from the wounds, but I do not stop. On the contrary, my charge accelerates. 100 meters, 50 meters, 30 meters. Captain Leon panics. Finally, he turns around to try and take refuge in the armored vehicle, but it is too late for him. I strike the armored car at full speed. The terrifying force of the impact flips it over. The armored vehicle does several barrel rolls in the air before crashing heavily to the ground, its chassis completely deformed. The captain is ejected from it. He falls onto the blood-covered ground. I walk toward him and look down from my full height. He stares at me, his eyes filled with terror and despair. Monster! You're just a monster. I raise my front hoof and violently crush the armored vehicle. Crack! Crack! The armored car is reduced to crumbs under my weight. The munitions inside begin to detonate. In a massive boom, the armored vehicle is reduced to a pile of scrap metal. The captain of the 8th Company is blown away by the shockwave. It's impossible to know whether he is dead or alive. By this time, I stand amid the ruins, my body covered in wounds, but my eyes shine with a gleam of excitement. Divine armed forces can no longer do anything against me. A system notification chimes. Heavy armored vehicle successfully destroyed. 800 high energy points obtained. Current weight 2250 kg. Strength 700. Constitution 650. Agility 400. Host has become the most powerful being in this zone. Suggestion: venture deeper into the savage lands in search of legendary creatures. I look at the mountain range, stretching into the distance. A mist shrouds it, and I can vaguely sense a terrifying aura emanating from it. It's time to go see. I leave the battlefield with the black bear and head deep into the savage lands. Thanks to the system, the wounds on my body heal rapidly. The cracks on my armor also repair themselves. I walk for about 3 hours. The surrounding landscape becomes increasingly desolate, and trees become more and more sparse. I suddenly stop because a familiar place appears before me. It is the old Colossus breeding farm. I hesitate for a moment. I finally decide to go take a look anyway. The farm is in ruins, overgrown with weeds. There is not a single ox left in the pen. I approach the one where I used to be locked up. The hay inside is still there, but it has grown moldy. It's at that moment that I hear a little girl's voice in the distance. "Papa, look! There's a huge ox over there." I turn around and see the Colossus standing at the entrance to the farm, holding Diodio's hand. Seeing me, the Colossus freezes in place. His face turns pale. He recognizes me, but the little girl isn't scared. On the contrary, she runs toward me, full of excitement. Wow, the big ox! He's much bigger than Xiao Hai. The Colossus is paralyzed with fear. He rushes forward to pull Diodio back. "Diodio, don't go near him! He's not a normal ox. That's He can't finish his sentence because he sees me staring at them. I slowly approach them. Terrified, the Colossus collapses to the ground, pulling the girl behind him to protect her. "I beg you, spare my daughter. If you have to kill someone, kill me." His voice trembles. His eyes are filled with terror. I arrive in front of them. I lower my head to look at them from above. The little girl stares at me with her big eyes without any fear. She is rather curious. Ox, is that you? How did you get so big? She reaches out her little hand to touch my snout. Terrified, the Colossus immediately grabs her hand, afraid I might harm her. Looking down at him, the memory of her tearfully begging the Colossus not to kill me comes back to my mind. Even though the Colossus eventually sold me, at least Diodio really cared about me. I gently rub my snout against Diodio's hand. Then I turn around and leave. The Colossus is dumbfounded. He didn't expect me to spare their lives. Xiaohai, is it really you? He asks, trembling. Without looking back, I continue my journey with the bear. The past is the past. I am no longer the domestic ox of former times that could be slaughtered at whim. After leaving the farm, I pick up my pace. System beep. Powerful energy fluctuation detected 10 km away. Suspected legendary creature. My eyes light up, and I charge in that direction. The further I go, the more intense the pressure in the air becomes. The black bear begins to tremble all over. It clearly senses the danger. I tell it to stay there and wait for me. Then I continue alone. I finally arrive at a clearing. Not a single blade of grass grows here. The ground is covered in scorched marks. A smell of sulfur hangs in the air, and in the center of the clearing lies an enormous creature. It is a giant python of terrifying size. It measures at least 30 meters long, is as wide as a barrel. System beep. Legendary creature detected, and is completely covered in jet black scales. Its head is as big as a small car, and its eyes are closed. It seems deeply asleep. System beep. Legendary creature detected. Abyssal python. Combat power evaluation. Extremely dangerous. Host is advised to exercise caution. This creature possesses cataclysmic destructive power. I stare at the giant python. My heart races. The oppressive aura emanating from this beast is stronger than any creature I've encountered so far. Yet I don't retreat. On the contrary, a gleam of excitement shines in my eyes. It is only by devouring it that I can surpass my limits and evolve to a higher level. I take a deep breath and slowly approach the python. But I have barely taken a few steps when the python suddenly opens its eyes. They are red eyes, full of coldness and a thirst for murder. It stares at me, a deep hiss escaping its maw. The next second, it abruptly raises its head and opens its gaping mouth to bite me. I dodge immediately. The python's fangs plunge into the ground, leaving deep craters. I seize the chance to charge and strike it with my bullhorns. But upon contact with those scales, my horns leave only a light scratch. This nasty creature's defense is even tougher than my armor. The python's tail whips the air violently, like an immense iron whip, and slams down on me. I am thrown back and crash heavily to the ground. Several cracks appear on my armor. What power! I struggle to my feet and activate my rage. My eyes turn blood red, and my strength skyrockets to 1,000 points. I let out a furious cry and charge the python again. This time I am faster, stronger. I activate Devastating Charge and slam violently into the python's body. The impact makes it stagger, and a few cracks appear on its scales. But it immediately retaliates, opening its jaws to spit a jet of black venom. The venom hits the ground, instantly corroding it and forming large craters. I dodge with all my might, but I am still splashed. The venom lands on my armor, producing a sizzling sound. My armor begins to corrode. I feel a sharp pain on my skin. The power of this venom is terrifying. The python takes advantage of this to coil around my body. Its colossal strength begins to crush me. I can hear my bones creaking, and breathing becomes increasingly difficult. No, if this continues, I'll end up suffocating. I struggle desperately, using the bone spikes on my back to stab it. My dorsal spines pierce its scales and sink deep into its flesh. Howling in pain, the giant python loosens its grip slightly, and I take advantage of it. I break free, breathing heavily and jaggedly. My body is covered in wounds. My armor is riddled with cracks and corrosion marks, but I do not retreat. On the contrary, the fury of battle shines even brighter in my eyes. I activate the Tower of Infernal Blades and strike the ground heavily. A deafening noise rings out. The earth shakes violently, making the giant python stagger. I seize the chance to lunge and strike its vital point with my horns using all my strength. This time, my horns finally pierce the scales and sink deep into its body. The python lets out a piercing hiss. It struggles desperately. Its tail whips me violently, throwing me against a massive boulder. The boulder shatters on impact. I crash to the ground, feeling every bone in my body on the verge of dislocating. Yet, I grit my teeth and stand back up. I rush at the python once more. In this fight, it's either him or me. The python and I clash in a frantic battle out in the open. Every impact makes the earth tremble. With its vital point injured, the python's movements have noticeably slowed, but its counterattacks remain ferocious. It spits its venom again. I dodge with all my might, but I'm still splashed on my hind leg. The armor is corroded, leaving a gaping hole. An excruciating pain runs through me. I almost lose my balance, but I clench my teeth and keep going. charging the python to plunge my horns violently into its eyes. The python lets out a cry of pain and thrashes its head violently. My horns deflect, only scraping its eyelid. Furious, it opens its gaping jaws to bite me. I have no time to dodge. I can only turn and present the spikes on my back. The spikes sink in. It lets go, screaming in agony. I seize the opportunity to unleash my devastating charge. I strike its skull violently. Crack! A fissure appears on its skull. Its body is seized by violent convulsions. I don't give it any respite. I rush at it again, aiming for its throat with my horns. This time, they sink in deeply. Blood sprays out like a fountain. The python lets out one final hiss. Its body spasms a few times, then it finally falls still. Legendary creature of the black sand, abyssal python, defeated. You have obtained 5,000 energy points, weight exceeding 2,500 kilos, strength exceeding 400 kilos, constitution exceeding 350, agility exceeding 450 points. Broken species limit. Ultimate evolution initiated. Exhausted, I collapse to the ground, covered in wounds, barely able to stand up. But the system notification forces me to get up and begin devouring the python's corpse. With the first bite of its flesh and blood, an unprecedented energy explodes in my body. I feel every cell of my body exult, frantically absorbing this energy. Devouring in progress, 10%, 30%, 50%. My armor begins to fall off as a new armor grows beneath my skin. It is darker, far more resistant. It shines with a metallic gleam. The spikes on my back also begin to grow, going from 1 meter to over 1.6 meters. Each glows with a dark, golden light. My horns are even more impressive. My height suddenly reaches 7 feet. As wide as a barrel, their tips are of terrifying sharpness, as if they could pierce heaven and earth. My body also begins to swell. My weight explodes, going from 2,500 to 3,000 kilos. My bulging muscles brim with explosive power. Skill, absorption complete. Current weight 3,000 kilograms. Strength 1,000. Constitution 900. Agility 600. Evolution complete. Current form, Lord of the Savage Lands. Ultimate skill unlocked. Devastating trample. Aura of the Lord, immortal body. I stand up, feeling an incredible force course through my body as if I could obliterate anything. I let out a roar toward the sky. My cry, like thunder, echoes across all the savage lands. Animals tens of kilometers around hear my roar. They all prostrate themselves on the ground, trembling with fear. The black bear comes running from afar. Seeing me, its eyes fill with a mix of respect and terror. It prostrates itself, not daring to lift its head toward me. I signal it to rise with a low grunt. It then stands up, trembling in every limb, to follow me. I turn toward the mountain range in the distance. It is the heart of the savage lands, the most dangerous place according to legend. But from now on, I fear no challenge. Taking the black bear with me, I step forward, deeper into the wild. In my path, all beasts retreat. No creature dares approach me. I climb the highest peak of the region and stand at the edge of the cliff, overlooking the land spread at my feet. In the distance, the cattle farm is no longer visible. It used to be my prison, but now these savage lands in their entirety are my territory. I roar to the sky once more, my voice shaking the mountains and forests. From the depths of the forest, the roars of countless wild beasts rise as if in answer to my call. Wolf packs, bear troops, tiger clans, even mutant creatures. All prostrate themselves toward the peak. They are pledging submission. They are bowing to the new king of this land. Looking at the thousands of beasts at my feet, a gleam of satisfaction crosses my eyes. From a simple beast destined for the slaughterhouse to the current lord of the savage lands, it took me less than 6 months. I have completely freed myself from the chains of humans. Against me, human weapons are nothing but toys. Starting today, these savage lands are my kingdom. The system notification chimes one last time. Congratulations to host. You have completed the ultimate evolution and have become the lord of the savage lands. A new journey will begin. A vaster world awaits your exploration. I look into the distance. Out there are higher mountains, deeper forests, and even more formidable adversaries. I know that this is only the beginning. I let out one final roar. The sound spreads across all the lands. The beasts respond in unison, making the mountains and forests tremble. From this day forward, I am the supreme king of these lands. No more humans, no more chains, no more constraints. Only the wild immensity is the infinite path of evolution. I turn to look even further. Out there, a thick fog covers everything. One can guess at an even vaster world. Perhaps even more powerful beings await me there. But I have no fear, for I am the lord of the savage lands, the demonic bull that devours everything. my journey. At the beginning, the black bear walked just behind me. Together, we plunged into the heart of the savage lands toward an unknown distance. Behind us, the roars of thousands of beasts resounded endlessly, as if bidding farewell to their king. And I, without ever looking back, step by step, advanced toward a more powerful future.